assisting at a small car dealership. I was supposed to be alone at the time and was getting ready to close up shop. I was going through, checking all the doors, switching off lights, when I heard what sounded like a grunt or growl coming from down the back hallway. Down this hallway on the right are doors to walled-off work bays, and on the left were offices followed by bathrooms. I froze for a second before turning the light back on, asking if anyone was there, and in not hearing a reply, I turned the light off and continued shutting down for the night. Walking back past the hall on my way to the back door to let myself out, I heard the noise again, and this time I couldn't ignore it. It definitely wasn't in my head. I went into the center of the showroom and dialed the business owner. Right to voicemail, his phone was off. I called one of the salespeople. He was too far away but told me to call the police if I was uncomfortable, or he could be there in about 20 minutes, whichever I liked. I told him I didn't want to waste the police's time and asked him to please come over when he could, and I'd keep an eye down the hall. At this point, the lights were all off, so I was in the center of the showroom, surrounded by old junkers, and just looking down this hall with an emergency exit light on it. I felt for my shield, but I forgot that I'd left it in my car because the company owner didn't want guns in his business. Anyway, a few minutes went by, and I heard what sounds like a sneeze mixed with a cough. I approached the hall and again shouted, "Is anyone down there? I called the police. They'll be here any minute. If you want to leave, exit where you are, and there's a fire exit at the end of this hall. Use it, just leave. I don't care what you're doing here, just go." A few moments pass, nothing. A few more minutes go by and I don't hear anything, but I saw a light start spilling out from under one of the office doors. The office lights are motion activated. At this point I was starting to panic. My hands were shaking, and I tried to quietly retreat towards the front door, where the sales guy was likely to come in from. But with my heart racing, I'm sure it was more like a sprint, slamming shoes and all. I was backed against the front door when I called the salesman again. He said he was about 5 minutes out and told me to wait outside. I looked for my keys. They're in my purse, across the showroom, right next to the hall. I was horrified. I wasn't going anywhere near there. I grabbed an umbrella for defense and just stood there waiting. What felt like hours went by, but in reality it was just a few moments. I was trying to work up the nerve to go get my keys when I heard a doorknob turning and light started entering the hall. Whoever was in the office was coming out. Before I could see who it was, and after seeing it was a decent-sized man, he clicked the sensor, turning off the lights. I shouted at him, "The police are on there." I got cut off by a loud bang coming from behind me. I screamed like a little girl, fell forward, turned around, realizing it's the salesman opening the door. He apparently felt the need to knock on it for some godforsaken reason. He opened the door in a heartbeat, maybe two, and he was in the showroom, gun drawn, telling the man to put his hands up within a minute. After a moment, he flicks on his flashlight, and the man in the hall turned back around to face us. He was dressed in a somewhat nice, older suit, with an untied tie and hat hair. He looked at us and, using sign language, said, "What the hell, Bobby? Put the gun away. Stop pointing that thing at me." Yeah, it was our Def Parts manager who was staying late to work on some paperwork. I had completely forgotten about him. We all had a good laugh, and from that point on, while I was working with the dealer, people would make a point to startle me. Fucking hell, I lost pounds that day. I work midnight shift at a gas station, and I have for quite a while at various stations in different areas with varying levels of criminal activity. I have regulars, of course. I'm a small-statured woman, so these regulars often worry about me and keep watch on creepy occurrences when they can. I had one man who worked in the metro an hour away, who would stop in every morning for his cigarettes. He never smiled or seemed friendly, and as I often do, I tried to think of what I could do that might make him smile one day. It took many months, but I finally pulled it off by having his cigarettes ready on the counter and already scanned for him to pay for as he walked in. He smiled and then asked me, "Do you ever get scared on the night shift? You're a small girl, it's not safe." I said I sometimes did, but we could lock the doors and hide if we had to, and that the state troopers had a station close by and came in often to get their highway vehicles washed. I had a good rapport with those police. He nodded and then told me a story about when he first moved to our country from Eastern Europe with his wife and child. He fell asleep at work one night at the gas station he worked midnights at. When he woke up, the phone had been ringing for hours, and his manager was shaking him violently, asking if he was all right. He was fine, he said. What was the problem? He was sorry he fell asleep. His manager screamed that it was fine he fell asleep and to look outside. All of their motor oil was missing and the outside of the place was a mess. The thieves had come and swiped all the oil and left him be because he slept through the entire thing. They then moved down the road to the next station for an encore. At that station, the clerk was awake and fought back, so the thieves stabbed him to death and left him to bleed out. When he finished telling me this, he concluded with, "If you ever feel sleepy, just lock the door and please do it. It might save your life." Months had passed since that encounter with the man who frequented the gas station. As I settled into my nightly routine, life carried on. One particularly quiet night, I began to feel really tired as I sat behind the counter. The monotony of the graveyard shift, coupled with the warm, dim lighting of the store, made it all too easy to succumb to drowsiness. Despite my best efforts to stay awake, the relentless pull of sleep grew stronger with each passing moment. Then, for some reason, the man's words resurfaced in my mind. His cautionary tale echoed in my thoughts, urging me to take heed of the danger. I rose from my seat and swiftly locked the doors, taking a moment to ensure they were secure. Satisfied that I had taken the necessary precautions, I settled back into my chair, determined to stay alert until the end of my shift. But as the hours dragged on and fatigue continued, I found myself drifting off despite my best efforts, and before I knew it, I had fallen asleep. It was the sound of frantic banging that jolted me awake, my heart pounding in my chest as I realized what was happening. Through bleary eyes, I saw 3 shadowy figures outside, their faces contorted in rage as they attempted to force their way into the store. Panic surged through me as I scrambled to my feet, adrenaline coursing through my veins as I searched for a way to defend myself. With trembling hands, I reached for the phone, my fingers fumbling over the keypad as I dialed for help. As the line rang, I prayed for a swift response, my heart racing with fear as the men continued their relentless assault on the door. And then, like a beacon of hope in the darkness, the flashing lights of a patrol car appeared in the distance, racing towards the gas station with sirens blaring. Relief flooded through me as the police officers arrived, apprehending the intruders before they could inflict any harm. In the aftermath of the ordeal, I couldn't help but think back to the man's words, a reminder of the importance of staying vigilant, even in the face of exhaustion. I'm a plumber, and about 4 years ago I got dispatched to a customer that wanted to replace a toilet. I drove about 45 minutes all the way up to her in Gurney, pretty far but fine. I drove up there and I went in. At first she was very nice, middle-aged, maybe early 50 to mid-50. It was a normal-looking house and she simply told me that she had a toilet and she wanted it replaced. She had received a quote from another company. I can't remember the exact amount, but after looking into it, I had told her I'd be able to save her about $100 if my company did the job. I started talking to her about pricing, and she started getting a tiny bit combative with me, saying that she wanted to give me money and a coupon, and that I must drive down to Home Depot and pick the toilet up for her. I told her that there would be a charge for that. We don't just take money and go pick things up for free. I could see she was now getting really pissed off. She got on the phone and was talking angrily to someone. By now I was starting to feel very uncomfortable. She then handed me the phone and said, "Here, talk to my dad." I started talking to her elderly father, which was kind of weird since she could be a grandma herself. I basically explained the same thing to him. As I'm discussing this with him, I saw her on the other side of the kitchen island pacing back and forth, mumbling to herself, which has me a little concerned. I'm kind of following her with my eyes as I'm talking to her dad. After the discussion, he eventually says, "Yeah, that might be a little expensive." I was still trying to figure out the price with him when she ran up to me and, screaming in my face, shouts, "Give me my phone back now." I immediately gave her phone back and she carried on screaming, "Get the fuck out of my house right fucking now," while reaching behind her and grabbing a knife out of the butcher's block. She then started chasing me around the kitchen, stabbing at me. She was literally trying to kill me. I ran out the front door, making a beeline to my truck, but she was right behind me. I jumped into my truck while she continued stabbing at the window. I had to peel out of there at high speed. I should say, a lot of people might say, well, I would have beaten her ass or I would have taken the knife. But when you're a guy in a house alone with a female customer, you have to be extremely careful how you handle things, because you can get sued so easily. I called the police and they came out. They were all nonchalant when I told them this lady had tried to kill me. She tried to stab me with a knife. "Oh, we know who this lady is. She has serious mental issues. There was an issue with the cable guy about 2 years ago and she had tried to kill him too. They told me I could press charges, but that they wouldn't stick because of how crazy she was, but that I could sign some form to have her involuntarily committed. I signed the form. Ever since then, I've had a lot of anxiety about going into random people's houses and fucking hell. When I was talking to her dad, he could have at least warned me about his crazy-ass daughter.